The container arrived on a Tuesday, which was fitting because Tuesdays were when the universe typically decided to mess with Sergeant Marcus Webb's life. It wasn't labeled properly. No manifest code, no origin stamp, just a sleek metallic cube roughly the size of a shipping crate, humming with internal climate systems and bearing a single diplomatic seal that looked both official and suspiciously vague. Webb circled it twice in the depot bay, coffee in one hand, scanner in the other, while the delivery pilot, a nervous man with sweat stains mapping his anxiety, shuffled his feet. "So," Webb said slowly, "what's in the box?" "Your compensation package, Sergeant, for services rendered during the Catherine conflict." Webb raised an eyebrow. "I got a medal for that. Bronze, slightly tarnished. It's on my shelf next to expired ration packs." "This is additional recognition." "From who?" The pilot consulted his datapad like it might save him. "The Interstellar Reconciliation Committee. High Value Cultural Exchange Initiative. Item classification, sentient." Webb's coffee cup paused halfway to his lips. "Sentient. Affirmative. You shipped me something alive." "Technically, yes. In a box. A very sophisticated box." Webb set his coffee down carefully, the kind of careful that meant someone was about to have a very bad day. But before he could begin the lecture about proper handling of living beings, the container's seal hissed open with a soft, pneumatic sigh. She emerged like smoke taking form, tall, maybe 6 feet, with skin the color of polished graphite and hair that fell in silver cascades to her shoulders. Her eyes were entirely black, no visible iris or pupil, just depths that caught the hangar's harsh lighting and refused to give it back. Catherine. Definitely Catherine, the species humanity had been fighting for 3 brutal years before the ceasefire nobody quite believed in. She stepped out of the container with deliberate grace, scanned the hangar with those unsettling eyes, then fixed her attention on Webb. "You're the human." Her voice carried an accent that turned every consonable into something sharp and precise. Webb glanced at the pilot, who was already backing toward his shuttle. "Depends. Are you here to finish what your people started?" "Unlikely." She tilted her head, studying him. "You're smaller than the propaganda suggested. And you're less horrifying than ours claimed. Funny how that works." A smile ghosted across her face, brief, there and gone. "I appreciate honesty in my captors." "Whoa, hold on!" But the pilot had already fled, his shuttle's engines roaring to life with what could only be described as enthusiastic cowardice. Webb turned back to find her examining the hangar's contents with analytical detachment. She picked up a wrench, tested its weight, set it down, touched the wall panel, watched it flicker in response. "I am Silra," she said without looking at him. "Former tactical analyst, 3rd Fleet. Now apparently your property, though I notice the paperwork uses gentler terminology." "Cultural liaison asset," Webb recited from memory, already hating how the words tasted. "Slavery with better branding. Your people have quite the gift for euphemism." He couldn't argue with that. "Look," Webb said, setting his coffee aside entirely, because this conversation required both hands for gesturing. "I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask for you, and I'm definitely not keeping anyone as property." She turned those black eyes on him, unreadable. "Then what will you do with me?" "Excellent question. What did you do with a former enemy combatant delivered to your doorstep like furniture?" "How about we start with breakfast?" Webb suggested. "The mess hall's protein paste is technically edible, mostly." Silra's expression suggested she'd faced worse. "Lead on, Sergeant." Outpost Meridian 9 wasn't much to look at, a converted mining station on a moon whose primary export was dust and occasional meteor strikes. Gravity generators worked most of the time. Life support kept you alive if you weren't picky about air quality, and the base AI had a personality disorder that manifested as passive-aggressive announcements. "Welcome to Meridian 9, the AI intoned as they walked through corridors that smelled faintly of ozone and disappointment. "Where hope comes to retire." "That's not the official greeting," Webb muttered. "It should be." Silra said nothing, but her gaze tracked every detail. Exits, camera placements, structural weaknesses, old habits from old wars. The mess hall was empty except for a maintenance bot, trying to repair its own motivational circuits. Webb gestured to a table while he coaxed the food synthesizer into producing something vaguely resembling breakfast. "So," he said, sliding a tray across to her, "you analyze tactics. What's your read on this situation?" She studied the gray paste with scientific interest. "You're uncomfortable, not with me, specifically, but with the concept of ownership. Your military gave me to you as a reward, which you find morally questionable. That obvious? You've apologized 3 times without using the word sorry." "Fair point." Silra took a cautious bite, her face cycling through several expressions before settling on resigned acceptance. "This tastes like regret given physical form." "Welcome to human cuisine. We specialize in disappointment." "I've noticed." Despite himself, Webb smiled, then caught himself smiling and tried to stop, which only made it more obvious. "Tell me something," Silra said, setting down her spoon. "If you don't want a prisoner, what do you want?" Webb leaned back in his chair, considering. "Honestly, someone who can help me keep this place from falling apart. The last tech who understood the gravity systems got transferred. The AI's developing existential dread, and something's been eating the hydroponics crops." "You want me to be maintenance crew?" "I want you to be whatever you choose to be, starting with not a prisoner." She studied him for a long moment, those black eyes searching for deception and apparently finding none. "You're either remarkably naive or genuinely decent. I haven't decided which." "Can't it be both?" "That would be inconvenient for my worldview." "Happy to inconvenience." Silra's mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but close enough to count as progress. The first week was an exercise in mutual adjustment. Silra took over the environmental systems with the kind of efficiency that suggested she'd been planning it from day one. She rewired the oxygen recyclers, optimized the water filtration, and somehow convinced the temperamental food synthesizer to produce something that resembled actual nutrition. Webb tried not to hover, failed repeatedly, and eventually accepted that she was simply better at this than him. "You were a tactical analyst," he said, watching her reconfigure a power distribution node with casual expertise. "Not an engineer. Catherine, education is comprehensive. We're taught to understand the systems we might need to destroy." She paused, tools in hand. "Or repair as circumstances require." "That's practical. It kept me alive during the war. Practicality usually does." There were moments when Webb caught glimpses of what that war had cost her, the way she never sat with her back to a door, how she inventoried every room before entering, the nightmares she didn't talk about but couldn't quite hide. He didn't push. Everyone carried ghosts from those 3 years. His were just different species. The base AI developed an attachment to Silra, which manifested as increasingly creative compliments. "Your neural patterns indicate superior intelligence," it announced one morning. "Unlike Sergeant Webb, whose cognitive function resembles expired yogurt." "Thanks, Greg," Webb muttered. "You're welcome. That wasn't a compliment." Silra found this hilarious, which was both gratifying and slightly insulting. The trouble started on day 12. Webb woke to alarms shrieking through the station's corridors. Not the usual malfunction warnings, but the specific tone reserved for unauthorized access attempts. He found Silra in the command center, fingers flying across holographic interfaces, while the AI provided running commentary like an overexcited sportscaster. "What's happening?" Webb demanded, still pulling on his jacket. "Someone's trying to slice into our communication arrays," Silra said without looking up. "Sophisticated work, military-grade encryption breaking protocols. Can you stop them?" Her hands moved faster. "Already did, but they'll try again." "Who?" "Unknown. The trace bounced through 17 proxy servers before I lost it." She finally turned to face him, and something dangerous flickered in those black eyes. "But the signature patterns match Kethrin intelligence operations." Webb felt his stomach drop. "Your people are looking for you." "Unlikely. I was listed as KIA after the orbital bombardment of Sector 7. She turned back to the console. "More probably they're looking for something else, and we're simply in the way." "Comforting. I don't do comfort, I do survival." They spent the next 3 hours fortifying the station's digital defenses, Silra building layer after layer of counter-intrusion protocols, while Webb handled the physical security upgrades. By the time they finished, Meridian 9 was locked down tighter than a diplomatic secret. Webb found her afterward in the observation deck, staring out at the moon's barren landscape. "You okay?" he asked. "Define okay." "Not actively dying or plotting murder." "Then I'm adequate." He joined her at the window. Below, dust storms painted the surface in shades of rust and gray. "You know, if you wanted to leave, I wouldn't stop you." She glanced at him sideways. "Where would I go? My people think I'm dead. Yours think I'm property. This," she gestured at the station, "is the closest thing to neutral ground in the entire sector. So you're staying out of convenience? I'm staying because you make decent coffee and don't treat me like a trophy." She paused. "Also, your AI has grown on me. It has personality. It has problems. Same thing." Webb laughed, despite the tension still coiled in his chest. "Fair enough." The attempted intrusions continued, sporadic but persistent. Each time Silra shut them down with increasing efficiency, learning their patterns, adapting her defenses. She was brilliant at it, better than anyone Webb had seen. And slowly, day by day, she relaxed. Not completely. You didn't erase war trauma with hot meals and bad jokes, but she started sleeping without her boots on, started laughing at Webb's increasingly terrible puns, started treating the station like home instead of a prison. One evening, while they were rewiring the backup power systems, a job that required crawling through maintenance tunnels barely wide enough for one person, she said something that stopped him cold. "I was engaged. Before the war." Webb waited, giving her space to continue or not. "His name was Trevin, communications officer, 4th Fleet. He died in the Battle of Proxima Relay." Her voice was steady, clinical. "I watched his ship break apart from my station, watched and couldn't do anything except continue my analysis because that's what training demanded." "Silra, I'm not telling you this for sympathy." She adjusted a coupling with unnecessary force. "I'm telling you because you should know why I understand loss, why I recognize what I see in you when you think no one's watching." Webb swallowed hard. "I lost my entire squad, 37 people. We were supposed to be on leave, but command needed one more transport run. Just one more." He laughed bitterly. "I was sick that day, food poisoning. That's why I wasn't on the ship when it hit the minefield." "Survival guilt," Silra said softly. Is there any other kind? No. She met his eyes in the dim tunnel lighting. But there's also survival, just survival, and sometimes that has to be enough. They finished the repair in silence, but it was a different kind of silence. Shared understanding instead of careful distance. 3 months in, everything changed. An official shuttle arrived without warning, cutting through Meridian 9's airspace with the kind of authority that meant trouble. Webb and Silra watched it land from the command center, tension crackling between them. "This is it," she said quietly. "They've come to retrieve me. Over my dead body." "That can be arranged." The shuttle disgorged 5 personnel, 4 military escorts and 1 officious-looking bureaucrat whose uniform had never seen actual combat. They swept into the station like they owned it, which technically they did. The bureaucrat, Commander Yates, consulted her datapad with the enthusiasm of someone reading a grocery list. "Sergeant Webb, I'm here to conduct a standard review of asset allocation and utilization." "Asset," Webb repeated flatly. "The Catherine liaison you were assigned. Our records indicate she should have been transferred to central processing 3 months ago for proper classification and placement." "She has a name." "That's irrelevant to protocol." Silra stepped forward, hands clasped behind her back in a posture that looked casual but wasn't. "Commander, I am Silra, former tactical analyst, Catherine 3rd Fleet. I formally request asylum under the Interstellar Reconciliation Accords, Article 7, which grants sentient beings the right to choose their placement if they can demonstrate economic self-sufficiency and security clearance." Yates blinked. "That's not standard procedure." "It's precisely standard procedure. Perhaps you should review the actual accords instead of the simplified version." Webb fought down a smile. Silra had spent the last month studying every legal document she could access, preparing for exactly this moment. Yates consulted her datapad with increasing frustration. "This is highly irregular." "This is highly legal," Silra corrected. "I've maintained and improved this station's operational efficiency. I've cleared security reviews. I've contributed to civilian-military relations. And most importantly, I'm asking to stay. The decision isn't yours to make." "Actually," Webb interjected, "it is. Article 7 specifically states that the host party, that's me, can sponsor asylum requests if the applicant demonstrates value and compatibility." "You can't sponsor her. She's your property." "She's not property. She never was. And I'm sponsoring her asylum request right now." Yates looked between them, clearly calculating whether this fight was worth the paperwork. Military bureaucrats lived and died by paperwork. "This will require extensive review," she finally said. "Take your time," Webb replied. "We'll be right here." The shuttle left. Silra and Webb stood in the hangar watching it disappear into the moon's thin atmosphere. "That was reckless," she said. Probably. "You might face disciplinary action." "Definitely." "They could transfer you." "Let them try." She turned to him, and for the first time since arriving, she smiled. Really smiled. "Thank you." "For what?" "Creating a bureaucratic nightmare that'll haunt us for years." "For treating me like a person instead of a problem." Webb shrugged, suddenly uncomfortable with sincerity. Seemed like the right thing to do. "Humans," she said, shaking her head. "You're all deeply irrational." "Is that a complaint?" "It's an observation." She started walking back toward the station's interior. "Come on, the hydroponics bay is still producing those bioluminescent flowers you inexplicably find beautiful. We should harvest them before they achieve sentience and file their own asylum requests." "That's not how plants work." "On this station, I'm not taking chances." 6 months later, the paperwork came through. Asylum granted. Silra was officially a free civilian with full rights and the option to leave whenever she chose. She chose to stay. They upgraded the station together, expanded the living quarters, improved the AI's emotional stability marginally, and turned the observation deck into something resembling a garden. The war felt distant now, like something that had happened to different people. One night, sitting among the bioluminescent flowers that cast everything in soft blue light, Silra said, "I never thanked you properly. For the terrible coffee and worse puns, for seeing me, not as an enemy or a trophy or a problem to solve, just me." Webb looked at her, really looked, the silver hair catching the light, the black eyes no longer quite so unreadable, the relaxed posture of someone who'd finally found safety. "Thank you for staying," he said. "This place was falling apart before you arrived. Also, I was going quietly insane from loneliness and talking to the AI. The AI is excellent company. The AI thinks expired yogurt is a compliment. Your point?" They laughed, and somewhere in that shared moment of joy, something shifted. Not dramatically, not suddenly, just a quiet recognition that they'd become something more than soldier and captive, more than human and alien. They'd become partners, friends, family of choice in a universe that had tried very hard to make them enemies. And maybe, just maybe, that was the most human thing of all. The official reports would list Outpost Meridian 9 as a minor installation of limited strategic value. The paperwork would categorize Silra as a successful integration case study. The bureaucrats would move on to other files, other problems. But on a small moon at the edge of settled space, two people who'd survived a war built something better than victory. They built a home. They built trust. They built a future that neither of their people had thought to imagine. And every morning, they woke up and chose each other again. That was the real triumph. Not the battles won or the peace treaties signed, but two individuals deciding that kindness mattered more than history, that connection mattered more than conflict. The universe might not notice, but they did, and that was enough.